What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the Pika Pika Papa, and as most of you know, I keep a ton of data points behind the scenes here on the channel. I keep booster boxes and ETBs and singles cards and slab prices and 3-pack blisters. And I mean, basically, if you can think of it, I probably have a chart which represents how that product has moved in price over time. And I think that's incredibly important to all of us because I know how hard you work for your money. I know how hard I work for mine. And whenever we spend it, I think it's really, really important that we have the best information at our fingertips that we can. And the reality is, with all of that information, it's impossible. There's just not enough hours in the day for me to give you content on all of those individual segments throughout the course of the month. So what I've started doing is this really cool video series. I call it The State of the Hobby. And around the end of every month, I try and aggregate as much of it as I can and put it in here. We're going to talk about the XY era, the Scarlet and Violet era. We're going to talk about the Sword and Shield era. We're going to talk about Sun and Moon. We're going to look at all kinds of singles cards and booster boxes. And we're just going to talk about a lot of stuff throughout the course of this video. And what that does is it helps us keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the hobby at the macro level. A lot of times we can identify certain segments of the hobby that are undervalued compared to others because that helps us understand where the best place to put our money is. Listen, I know how hard you work for yours. I know how hard I work for mine. And I'm a big believer that we need to spend it with the most amount of information we can at our fingertips, especially when the market is doing what it is right now, where everything is so incredibly red hot. But before we talk about where the market is today, I thought it'd be really cool to take a step back, right? September marks exactly 2 years since I've started aggregating this information. So I wanted to share with you where the prices were for some of these generations 2 years ago, talk about where they are now, and see where they might be heading in the future. So what you see in front of you right here is this is September of 2023. I started this journey of aggregating all of this information. So on the left, that T20 column, right, that represents the top 20 singles cards. So what that is I look at every single set that has a booster box, and around the 15th of every single month, I type into Excel, I hard key it in, the top 20 singles card prices. So Sword and Shield, 12 booster boxes, top 20 cards from each set. That is the aggregate value of those 240 cards back in September of 2023. The column on the right represents booster boxes. So if you were to buy one of every single booster box from each of those generations back in September of 2023, that's what it would have cost you. Now, as you can see, those percent change columns, those are blacked out because, as one would imagine, I am about to show you where they have moved over the last 2 years. And I'm telling you right now, it is absolutely amazing. So this is where we stand today. And as you can see, every single one of these is up a ridiculous amount. Matter of fact, the only column that is not up over 100% over the last 2 years is the Sun and Moon top 20 singles cards, and it is still up 78%. There isn't an investor in the world who wouldn't take a 2-year 78% gain. I promise you that. These are just absolutely absurd gains. But just because we've gone through this gain in the past doesn't mean it's going to repeat itself in the future. But one of the things that I thought was interesting as I was aggregating this information this month was just kind of this call out right here. So I look at where Sun and Moon from a booster box perspective was 2 years ago, right? And all 12 of them would have cost us $7,306. Well, look where Sword and Shield is today. Sword and Shield booster boxes, if you were to buy all 12 of them, would cost you $8,037. So not exactly at the exact same point, but it is in the same ballpark. It's relatively close. So then I said, hey, why not look at the singles cards, right? Same thing. If you were to buy those 240 Sun and Moon single cards back in September of 2023, that would have cost you $12,604. And now if you were to buy the 240 top 20 singles cards from Sword and Shield today, again, not the exact number, but you're talking 13,851. So the Sword and Shield prices today remind me very similarly of where the Sun and Moon prices were 2 years ago. Now, that does not mean that there's going to be a one-for-one, right? I do think at some point the Pokemon Company International is going to figure out this supply and demand and how everything's out of whack right now, which is purely what is driving the prices. Obviously, we have some awesome cards and awesome sets, but the price appreciation as aggressively as it is simply because nobody can get their hand on product. But it is worth noting to say, okay, we see where Sword and Shield is now. We know where Sun and Moon was before. At least there's some correlation there. And we also know where Sun and Moon has gone over the last 2 years. And as I said, even though those top 20 singles cards didn't see as aggressive as a gain as some of these others, it doesn't matter. Plus 78% over the last 2 years is absolutely incredible. And look at where the booster boxes did. They went from $7,306. 2 years later, they're at $24,588. For me, that is the biggest takeaway, is even though some of these Sword and Shield booster boxes are starting to hit really high price points, I think that they have a very, very healthy, room to run in front of them because we have seen what Sun and Moon has done. Again, and I always say this, it doesn't mean it's a one-for-one, doesn't mean they're going to follow the exact same path, but it is really cool to take a look at these. So before I get into this and we start looking at these eras and singles cards and booster boxes, I thought this would be a really cool time just to give my usual pause and say, hey, listen, as you can tell, we do a ton of work behind the scenes here. We are always trying to bring you the best information possible. If you're enjoying it, if you're having fun, if you find value in it, hit the subscribe button or give us a thumbs up. We got big plans at 25,000 subscribers, so every subscription helps. So if you don't mind and you're enjoying it, hit that button for me. It goes a long way in helping my small channel out. So with that out of the way, let's start looking at some of these other things. So here it is. This is what I normally present, and this is a graph of how those top 20 singles cards and booster boxes in the XY era have performed over the last 2 years. Now, as you can see, this is a great way for us to understand at a macro level how the XY era has been moving, and we're going to look at the same thing for Sword and Shield and Sun and Moon, and we're going to look at it for Scarlet and Violet too, even though that's an abbreviated point right now. But look at how hot XY singles cards have been. From January of 2024 all the way till now, they have not had a single month where those 240 cards in aggregate price have come down month over month. There is not another generation that can say the exact same thing. Sun and Moon was really hot. We'll see that in just a minute, but none of them have been as hot as this. And the big takeaway for me from this slide right here is look at where the starting off point was. Back in October of 2023, the aggregate value of those cards was only $4,417. So the XY era was very, very undervalued. And as you can see, it has rewarded the people who were big fans of XY back then with some very healthy price appreciation over time. And then when you look at the booster boxes too, again, really high jumping off point. Back in October of 2023, it started off at about $12,000. But still, even though it started off at $12,000, it's still more than doubled, as the price for all 12 of those booster boxes today would set you back almost $27,000. It is just incredible to see what these cards and these boxes have been able to do from what a really, really cool and from the past underappreciated generation. Next one we're talking about is Sun and Moon, and Sun and Moon booster boxes like steals the show here. So what I want you to do is look at how aggressive of that price spike is in terms of that bright blue line on that booster box price graph. That is incredible. Like, that is a pure definition of a hockey stick graph right there, right? It kind of gets slow, works its way up, then all of a sudden it shoots to the moon. So if you want to see it represented numerically, I think the best thing to do is take your eyes to January of 2025, right? As you can see, from December to January of 2025, those booster boxes from Sun and Moon were up 5%. Then in February, they were up 7%. Then in March, they were up 7%, and then 9%, and then 8%. Then things are getting really crazy, right? In June of 2025, they went up 10% month over month. Then in July, 12% month over month. In August, 17% month over month. And from last month to now, up 26% month over month. It is just crazy to see how everybody is piling in on these Sun and Moon booster boxes, which in turn is driving the prices up. And again, Sun and Moon top 20 prices, exact same thing. You can see though, if you look at it, if you look at that bright blue line right there, you can see that really from September of 2023, really all the way to December of 2024, it didn't move a whole lot. Like, there were some ups and downs, but in the reality is the price point was almost the exact same. And then in 2025, the Sun and Moon top 20 singles cards went absolutely Looney Tunes. That graph takes off like a scalded rabbit. And as you can see, we've had very, very healthy price appreciation in Sun and Moon continuing into this month. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is Sword and Shield, but to understand where Sword and Shield is today, I wanted to show you the exact graph that we showed when we did this video series back in July. And the takeaway was this. So if you look at the yellow space and if you look at the green space, both of those on the bottom graph represent times when the top 20 singles cards were coming down in prices, okay? But the graph at the top shows you the booster boxes. So the last 2 times that we had seen the top 20 singles cards coming down in prices, the booster boxes at least held their water, right? They didn't go up a ton. They didn't come down a ton. Like, the booster boxes remained steady, even though the top 20 singles card prices were coming down. And back in July, what we called out was this divergence. So even though those singles cards in the Sword and Shield era were getting absolutely waylaid, coming down in value left and right, like, some of the best chase cards that we've seen in recent memory were all just shredding value week after week. But while that was happening, the booster box prices were going up. And we said something has to change. Something's going to shift. It just does not make sense for the singles cards to be coming down while the booster box prices are going up. So what did we see the next month? This is what it looked like In August, we started to see the top 20 singles cards, which is the price there at the bottom, start to level off a little bit. And then we highlighted there. So those are the exact numbers. And you can see I have them bracketed in those purple graphs. We said, listen, the last time we saw these singles cards come down in price, they were in 4 to 5 month blocks, and then they turned positive. So we started to say, hey, listen, this is month number 5. Things are starting to find support lines. Like, don't sleep on Sword and Shield. We think that there is some significant upside. And then that brings us to today. This is what the graph looks like. And I won't go too deep into this because I did a whole video on it earlier in the month, but take a look at how those top 20 singles card prices have performed there at the bottom. It is absolutely insane. Matter of fact, I'm going to blow it out so everybody can see it. The top 20 singles cards rebounded by going up 22.46% in aggregate value from August to September. That is an insane amount of growth in a very, very short amount of time. But don't sleep on the booster boxes. I thought that maybe when the singles cards started to take off, like the booster boxes, they've been running so hot, maybe they'll start to slow down just a little bit. Not so fast, my friend. Take a look. The booster boxes went up in September as well, 17.5%. So just Sword and Shield is coming back with an absolute fury, and I love to see it. Next thing that we have been doing, we have been looking at Scarlet and Violet. And Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield have been moving in lockstep. So again, this is back from August. And in August, we said the same thing. We said, hey, listen, Sword and Shield is starting to slow down in terms of that price depreciation. Scarlet and Violet is starting to slow down in terms of that price depreciation. Like, this could be the time. Like, Scarlet and Violet might start to pop off here. And then again, we did a whole video series, so I won't go into it too much, but look at what we saw. Those Scarlet and Violet top 20 singles popped off, up 12.5%. And the booster boxes, I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. We'll talk about the booster boxes later on, but the booster boxes went crazy. So here you can see on the right, that's the Sword and Shield top 20 singles cards. On the left is the Scarlet and Violet. And you can see that they have really moved in lockstep really throughout most of 2025. So that's something that I would keep in mind because I love both of these generations. I do. Matter of fact, I love all of them, but I'm really into Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet right now. So understanding that they're both having a tendency to go up in price and down in price at the same time is just something I like to keep in the back of my mind. Now, one of the things that we called out too throughout the course of this month has been, listen, even though we're seeing the aggregate value go up, a lot of that aggregate value is coming from the big chase cards. So obviously these are 3 of the big chase cards from the Sword and Shield era, and take a look what has happened. You see that Giratina is absolutely blowing up. The Gengar is up to $750 again. The Lugia is hitting all-time highs up at $416. So we talked about that. We said, hey, listen, the aggregate value is boosted, but a lot of that is coming from the chase cards. So we did a very specific video this month where we looked at the middle tier Sword and Shield cards that have an opportunity to grow, because usually chase cards are first, and then those middle tier cards are a fast follow, either the second month or the third month after. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. There's no way to say the same patterns are going to follow, but the last 2 times we went through this type of price explosion, chase cards first, middle cards second. So I think there's some really interesting opportunities in that space as well. Same thing here. Same thing in the Scarlet and Violet. Like, we saw the aggregate value increase month over month. But again, in Scarlet and Violet, most of it was coming from your chase cards. Here's your Greninja. Here's your Lily's Clefairy. Like, I love both of these cards. I think they're really, really cool. I really like that Lily's Clefairy. I think that thing is far oversold from that Journey Together set. And then, of course, the 2 biggest Charizards up to date over the last couple years, you got them right here. From 151 is already up over $300. And then the one from Paldean Fates there is knocking at the door of $300. Like, again, we're seeing a lot of the chase cards really start to spike in price. We did a whole video separately from the Sword and Shield one on Scarlet and Violet cards that are kind of in that mid-tier. So don't sleep on any of these mid-tier cards. There are some really, really awesome opportunities to get in right now. Now, the other thing that we were talking about here is booster boxes. You've heard me talk about that a lot. And Scarlet and Violet booster boxes are in a very, very interesting, precarious. I don't know what to say. Like, they're just in a very interesting space right now. You look at Destined Rivals. Destined Rivals booster boxes popped off all of a sudden, and they're up at $444. That was when I pulled this data. It's probably higher by the time you actually get a chance to watch this. So Destined Rival booster boxes are absolutely going nuts. And then you take a look at Paldea Evolved, right? Paldea Evolved booster boxes are almost at $500. Like, I want you guys to understand this. It took Evolving Skies 1 month short of 2 years, right? So it took it 23 months, if memory serves me, for Evolving Skies to finally hit that $400 mark in terms of booster box pricing. Almost 1 month shy of 2 years for Evolving Skies to get to $400. And here we have Paldea Evolved, which is a great set. And again, it's knocking at the door at 2 years, but you have Paldea Evolved, which is already at $470. You got Destined Rivals, which just came out, which is knocking on the door of $500. You got Obsidian Flames, which is sitting there at $324. And the other thing that I wanted to call out about this that is really, really interesting is, do you remember that first slide I showed you in the very beginning? All 12 of the Sword and Shield booster boxes, again, 2 years ago, September of 2023, that would have cost you $2,058. If you were to go out and buy one of every Scarlet and Violet booster box today, that would cost you $2,917. Two less booster boxes and almost 50% more in terms of pricing. I just thought that was important to call out so all of us can conceptualize where the market is right now. Now, I think Paldea evolved because of its age. I think that's a little bit safer, but I do think, and I hope, and honestly, I really, really wish that the Pokemon Company International would find a way to get more of these late series, high dollar booster boxes out there in the public so people can have it. It breaks my heart to think that everybody out there is having to pay close to $500 for a Destined Rivals booster box. Now, I am in this for the long run. I want Destined Rival booster boxes someday to be $500, but I want everybody to have the opportunity to buy it at a reasonable price to enjoy the ride, to enjoy the price appreciation. I don't like it getting so high so fast because I think, unfortunately, because of cost, it just flushes some people out of the market. And I don't think that's good. I want everybody to enjoy this as much as I do. So that's the end of my rant on that. That's the end of my soapbox. This is a big rundown of the state of the hobby this month, and I cannot wait. I'm going to do something really cool. So I did a video, like I told you, about the mid-tier cards from Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, and people seem to really like that. So what I'm going to do is, you saw XY, you saw the Sun and Moon era. I'm going to do the same thing for one of those eras. I think it's going to be XY. We're going to look at some of those middle-tier cards and see ones that still have some opportunity for upside, because I think that there's some really cool cards in that space. And even though we've seen XY grow as much in price as it has, still those top 20 singles cards are below Sword and Shield and are below Sun and Moon. So still be some room in the XY era. So we're going to do that later on this month. If you enjoyed this video, if you found value in it, if you had fun along the way, and if you want to see that one further on down the road, hit that subscribe button or give us a thumbs up. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I can't tell you how much it helps me. Hope you have an epic rest of your day. I'll talk to you later, everybody. See ya. Bye.